As drivers, most of us probably have at least a couple of restaurants that we refuse to pick up from. But in our line of work, is that healthy? Sometimes, chances are, if you have a restaurant blacklisted, there's probably a pretty good reason for it. But when, if ever, should we find it in ourselves to forgive them and give them another try? What's going on, everybody? I'm Zach Drives Fast for the RideShare Guy, and this video is all about when it's reasonable to be mad and when we need to build a bridge and get over it. Before we get too far into the video, I want to take a moment to talk about a tool that every driver should have: Solo. Some of the most common problems that drivers face are oversaturation and dwindling earnings. Solo can help you solve those problems. They have millions of data points throughout countless markets in the United States that'll tell you when you should drive and how much you should earn. Should you fall short of that estimate, they'll cut you a check for the difference. Do your earnings a favor and check out Solo by clicking the link in the description, and you'd be helping support the RideShare Guy in the process. Alright, let's get back to the video. I like to think that I'm a pretty reasonable person, but I don't like getting my time wasted, because time is money. I've blacklisted several restaurants over the years for reasons including, but not limited to, their wait time estimates being less than accurate. They prioritize the driver dead last. They let me wait for an hour, only to tell me then that it's going to be another hour. And I even blacklisted a restaurant for trying to give me an exorcism once. Kind of. True story though. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Time is money, and when a restaurant wastes our time, they're costing us money. So, if they're a habitual time waster, there's no harm in blacklisting them. With that said, is it wise to keep restaurants on our blacklist forever, or should we give them another try? And if so, when? The answer to that question is, it depends. I want to share two stories about times that I blacklisted restaurants and why one of them got off my shit list while the other one likely never will. A couple summers back, we had a record-breaking heat wave in my county. Areas got up to 115 degrees here, which is unheard of. In fact, it got so hot that several restaurants decided to shut down due to the lack of air conditioning in the area, plus the added heat of their fryers and ovens. This was one of those days where it didn't matter which app you opened. You were going to stay busy. The problem was, the restaurants were also slammed. I accepted an order for a popular sushi place and made my way to the restaurant. Once I got there, I realized I was in for it. It took about half an hour to even be acknowledged by the staff due to the sheer number of customers flooding the place. When somebody finally did grace me with their presence, I gave the name of the customer and she ran off to check on it. But problem was, she never came back. Another 10 to 15 minutes pass and another employee comes up, grabs the name of my customer, and once again runs off to check on the order. Once again, they didn't come back. At this point, I was almost certainly trying to decide if the pay was worth it. Considering the fact that I had been there nearly 45 minutes at that point, must have been paying reasonably. Finally, a third person came up and asked me who I was there for. For a third time, I gave the name and they ran off to check on the order. This person did come back, albeit with some bad news. They told me that they had their tablets off and that if I wanted to wait for the order, it was going to be about an hour. Never stormed out of a restaurant so fast in my life. Before the saga of Waitgate, this place had a reputation of ignoring drivers, so this specific incident happened to be the one that broke the camel's back. So, I blacklisted them. This specific place ended up staying on my list for about 6 months. Here's why it wasn't permanent. This was not a small mom and pop place, and I knew if I waited about 4 to 6 months that chances were pretty good that the entire staff would be different. And I was right. After about 6 months passed, I gave them another shot, and I haven't had issues since. Let's move on to the one that will stay blacklisted indefinitely. I'm sure we all have at least one fast food joint in our market that doesn't start the order until the driver shows up. And usually this isn't a big deal, as it's fast food and it typically doesn't take long to be made. But what happens when it's not a fast food place? It's an actual sit-down restaurant, and they don't start the order until you show up. And their wait times are ridiculous, like an hour. You blacklist them. Now, this specific place is not a mom and pop restaurant. They experience high turnover just like any other restaurant. So, why won't they come off my blacklist? This specific place decided that it was a brilliant idea to implement a policy where they didn't start making the order until they had a driver assigned to it. They started this policy during the lockdowns because, according to them, they were not guaranteed to get a driver in a reasonable amount of time. Now, don't get me wrong. Back then, it was very common for Grubhub orders to be well over an hour late. But those days are long gone. Sure, back then it may have been a little tougher to get drivers assigned to the orders, but now it's tough for them to get drivers assigned to the orders because they don't make it until we show up. Legend has it, from the restaurant's perspective, keeps the food fresh, but from the driver's perspective, keeps things obnoxious. Short of them changing their policy and actually making the order before the driver shows up, they will remain blacklisted due to them being a habitual time waster. Nowadays, it's almost never profitable to wait an hour for the order to come up. Let's talk about a couple more examples of when you may want to blacklist and when you may want to give them another chance. I want to get this one out of the way right now. Typically speaking, rude staff is not a good reason to blacklist a restaurant. You know as well as I do that not all drivers are the kindest people out there. We're in a hurry, we're impatient, and some of us can be kind of rude sometimes. So, chances are the staff has had bad experiences with us. The single best way to combat this is just to be kind to them and treat them like a human being. If you start to feel your blood pressure rising, it's time to hit the exit. If the staff knows you are always pleasant to them, you'll probably get far more prompt service. Another one that I hear all the time and that I've experienced myself is that they prioritize everybody over the driver. Is that a good reason to blacklist a restaurant? I don't know your market, but you need to ask yourself how much time that kind of behavior adds to your pickup. If it's substantial and it happens all the time, they should probably make your list. If there's typically only 1 or 2 people in line ahead of you and the order pays fairly well, it's when you should probably hurry up and wait. Now, what about that frustrating scenario where you drive to a restaurant to pick up an order only to find out that they never got it to begin with? Admittedly, this doesn't happen as often as it used to, but there are still those places out there that seem to not get the order far too often. Those are the places that I want to talk about. There's a place in my market that has a few virtual restaurants, and it seems like about 1/5 of the time when I show up to pick up an order, they never got it. In fact, an order paying really well from this restaurant is typically a red flag for me. I always have to ask myself how many drivers unassigned that before I got it. Well, I haven't actually blacklisted this place. I am exceedingly careful about when I accept offers from there. If I get a reasonable paying offer and I'm close enough, I'll pop in, cross my fingers, and hope for the best. I would call, but there is a language barrier with this specific place, so it's easier for me to just go in. However, if I'm a couple miles away from this place, I'm not going to risk it. The final thing I want to touch on is fast food. Depending on the market you drive in, the time of day you're out, and the day of the week you're driving, this may or may not be a factor for you. If you're driving later in the evening, chances are pretty good at some point you're going to end up in a drive-thru line. Now, for me, that almost always means about a 15 to 20 minute wait. What I really don't like about these orders is the moment that another car pulls in the drive-thru behind you, you're committed. Sure, you could unassign the order, but it's not like you can get out of line. There's several fast food places in my market that I add to my blacklist after their lobbies close. For the sake of this video, let's call it a conditional blacklist. It's not because the staff pissed me off or they're always losing orders. It's almost always because the money just isn't worth the wait. Well guys, I want to hear from you. Tell me about a time you blacklisted a restaurant. Will they ever get off your blacklist? Let me know why or why not. If you haven't done so yet, please do consider pressing the like button and subscribing to the RideShare Guy. You can catch my videos here every Tuesday. If you enjoyed this video, check out this video next where I talk about when it's wise to favor long trips versus short trips. I'm Zach Drives Fast for the RideShare Guy. Take care.